Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it may be at the time that you are listening to this podcast. I am your host, Miss U'nique, and welcome in. Come on in. This is Beyond Unique Shattered Dreams, where every shattered dream becomes a sometimes harsh reality. Yes, it does. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to today's episode. Today's episode is going to be about how I entered into the deliverance ministry, meaning casting out demons. If you don't know what deliverance means, but this is a practice that was biblical in the Christian community. It's called deliverance. I believe in the more so Catholic community, they call it an exorcism, both meaning casting out demons. This is things that the disciples and that Christ did biblically, and it's still happening today. But I want to take you back to how it even started in my life and how God kind of led me on a journey of even realizing that this was going to be a part of my life. So when I was younger, and I had been saved for many years now, but during that time, this was my younger years. So I had got saved at, saved meaning accepting Christ as my Lord and Savior in my life. I had done this around 15, and I did it at a school, at my school, actually. Yeah, we had my high school. We had a morning session with my chemistry teacher, believe it or not. My chemistry teacher was leading the group, and he was a believer in Christ, and he led the morning group. And it was like 7 something in the morning until school started at like 8 or 8:30, something like that. And I believe I remember giving my life to Christ in a chemistry lab, in the back of a chemistry lab, out of all places. Yes, in my high school. I sure did. And that's what really started my journey. Even though when I was younger, I had been going to church and things like that with my mom, my parents and things. And this was the first time that I feel like I was really conscious of me making this real decision to really serve God, right? So chemistry lab, 15. Fast forward, I realized that there's this Christian channel, for those of you who are listening, if you know, and it was called TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network. And this was like the channel for all of the Christian things. And I think that they still have this channel around. But this had all of your latest pastors on there. And as a believer, most believers knew that this was the channel to watch. So I watched this channel all the time. Now, fast forward somewhere about 18 or so, I remember watching one of the shows from TBN, one of the church programs from TBN. And I remember that particular pastor was praying, and they were praying for healing. And I remember I had terrible back pains when I was a youth, teenage years or so. And I remember having a terrible back pain, and I remember them saying, like, if you have any pain in your body and you want to like touch and agree kind of thing, you touch the screen and agree with me that this pain is going to be gone in your body, this sickness is going to be healed, whatever the situation was. And I decided that I was going to do that, right? And I did. And I was like, my back hurts so bad. I trust God. I believe God. I'm going to come into agreement with this pastor. And I remember the pastor going over to like the screen, talking to the actual camera and putting his hand out. And I put my hand out. And I can tell you that I felt the power of God through the screen hit me. And I just felt like this warmth. I believe I began to like shake a little bit, and I felt this warmth all down my back. And oh my goodness, my back had never felt that good up until that point, because I was constantly dealing with these back issues. So I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? So here I am. I've gotten this healing. I don't think I even told anybody about it, but I got this healing and I'm feeling amazing. And I'm loving TBN, and I'm watching TBN every day, almost all day, whenever it is I can. And so I started watching this program that was specifically on, I remember seeing this pastor, and he had some members kind of lined up, and he was not on the pulpit or on the stage. He was below that on the floor, and it was some of the members were lined up, and he was going over to speak to them. And I remember that the man or woman that he was talking to, I can't remember which one, I remember that I was like, they sounded, weird. And I was like, why do they sound like that? And so I kind of turned it up some, and I was able to hear that particular minister talking to that person. And he's now now asking questions to that person, saying things like, how did you get here? Why are you attacking him? And I was like, is he talking to him? And then I realized after a while, I was like, oh, he's not talking. He's talking to the man or the woman, but he's not talking to the man or the woman. And I hear them and see them responding back, and they're like growling, and they're like upset at his questions and things. And I'm like, oh, wow. So this was pretty captivating, right? Like, this really drew me in. And I was like, wow, is this for real? And after that episode, I started looking for other episodes. And this was like the only ministry, especially on this network, that was doing anything like this. And I was so captivated by it. I was so drawn in. It was so interesting to me. And I was like, wow, this type of stuff is really happening. So I went off to college, and back then. And during those times, there was VHS tapes. And for those who do not know, who might be listening to VHS, yes, these were those thick black rectangular tapes that you can put in what was called a VCR. Okay, is what it was called. And I had a bunch of those. So when I went off to college, I kept watching this ministry. And I was so pulled in. I kept watching this ministry, and I would record the ministry as I was watching it so that I could go back to watch it. And even if I wasn't going to be there when it came on, I set it to record it. And I was recording over all the old tapes and stuff that we had. And I just wanted more and more and more of this ministry. And so I am drawn in. I am hooked. Okay. And I'm just like, I'm taking it all in. And I'm realizing that there is a part of the spiritual realm that I had no idea about. Right. And who was going to tell me about it? Like, who was going to tell me about this? I hadn't seen anything like this before. I had never heard anything like this before. And this was just absolutely captivating for me. So I'm in college. I'm 18, 19 in college. I'm recording all of the stuff. I'm recording all the stuff. Fast forward. And now I know about the Deliverance ministry. You know, I'm an adult. This is many years later. Maybe 7 years later. So, around maybe 26, 27, something like that. So many years later, and something particular is happening in my life in this moment. So for those of you who have been keeping up with the episodes, there is a previous episode that I have that was called The Relative That Escaped. And during this time, this relative was living with me. And at this time, my husband. And and they were young at this time. They were 11, they were 12 at this time. So what we ended up dealing with was there was so much trauma that went on from this relative that every day they would either be crying, they would have to talk to me, they would have to kind of get all of this off of their chest because they came from this abusive space mentally, emotionally, and physically. They came from this space of trauma. So there was so much that they needed to get out. And so almost daily, they were kind of spewing this out and having to get this out. And here I am like, well, I surely have to, listen to this because I can't imagine that a child would have to carry all of this that this relative was carrying. And so I became that buffer. I became kind of that buffer for them and that safe place and soft place for them to be able to tell their truth and be transparent and be real about their feelings and what was taking place and what was transpiring during those times. So one day, there was a lot of instances, but I'm going to tell this instance because I believe this was the very first instance. Now, during this time, my husband and I, we are looking through books of spiritual warfare. books that are talking about the different root causes of certain spirits and how they connect to a person, and different things spiritually. Okay, so we are now in this space of doing our own research. We belong to a church at this time, but this is not what's being offered at the church. And so we're doing our own research at this time. So this is going to matter for the story ahead. We're doing our own research at this time. So we got these books and things like that. So one day, this particular relative starts what is called manifesting. And manifesting is when there is a spirit or a demon, a negative entity taking over that person's, body, in speech, in actions, in words. It could be distorting their body. So remember, she's 12, and we can see these things happening. And usually, because she was sharing all those stories, when she got into a place like that, it seems to be that she was triggered, or these entities in her were triggered by her sharing these things, by this truth, right? Because they did not want her to be free, right? The Bible says that the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So does his demons. So they don't want us to be free, right? So they didn't want her to be free. But as she was sharing all these things, she was becoming more and more free. So as she's manifesting, we're like, we didn't really know what to do, but we knew what was going on. So we start going to these books, right? We start going to these books, trying to figure out what is wrong with her, or what it is that we have to do. Meanwhile, there is growling, there is foaming at the mouth. Yeah, this is what's going on at our home, okay? And she is extremely strong. Now get this, she's 12 years old, right? But literally, she had the strength. I describe it as she had the strength of like 5 men, grown men. We literally had to like hold her down so that the entity that was in her taking over her would not tear up the house. Okay? Because of all of the manifesting that was going on. So we get into our books, we get the Bible, and we are going in, right? The best that we could. We have nothing to go on. This point is when I realize, oh, we're in the trenches here. Like, God didn't put us right here in the mix, right? There's no place to go. This is our training ground, and we got to do something, right? So all this reading, we now have to put it to action. So we begin to get the books and see what particular spirit this is, to see if we can identify it and all of the things. I'm holding her down, her down at the top portion, chest and arms portion. He's trying to kind of keep her legs down. All of this while growling, foaming, kicking. A lot of things are going on. And so we're opening up the word and saying scriptures. We got the other books open and we're calling out certain spirits, and they're getting agitated in her and she's getting agitated. And you can tell that this fight is just going on inside of her, right? And with that, I realized, because this is a spiritual fight, you have to be part of that, right? So sometimes during this process, your soul kind of takes a back seat as these spirits are manifesting. So you have to fight to come back and be able to regain ownership of your body and your mind. And so I'm having that relative, I'm saying to that relative, I'm saying their name, and I was like, you have to fight. You have to fight. You know, and they're like, I'm trying. I'm tired. I can't fight. So it's her that's coming up. And then I remember laying the Bible on her chest. And that particular spirit manifests and says, get that effing thing off of me. We all know what the word effing would stand for, but that's what that spirit said. Get that effing thing off of me. So it couldn't stand the Bible. It couldn't stand the fact that we were identifying these spirits, identifying them and calling them up and calling them out. And also we are helping her to understand that she is part of this fight and that she has to regain control over her body and she has to fight back. So during this, it is just a battle. It is a battle. And I mean, it's a battle for a nice period of time, a long period of time. And we are just back and forth and casting out demons, and she's spitting up and foaming at the mouth and all the things. If anybody knows anything about deliverance and has ever seen deliverance take place, this is what was going on in this 12-year-old. And here we are in our training ground. And I realize all the years that I have seen this, watched this, it was here at my doorstep and it was here in my home. Okay. And it was very real. It was very live. Okay. And it was happening whether we wanted to or not. Okay. That's what I knew. So we're kind of tag teaming throughout this whole process, and we finally get, her to kind of come back, regain control. We've casted some demons out here, and we're kind of finally back. She's exhausted. We're exhausted. It's a lot going on here. A lot is going on here. And still, guess what? We had to go to church that night. We had to go to church that night. And we still went. We still went. With all of that took place, we still went. And I remember us sitting. Yeah, I remember us sitting in the back of the church and just us feeling really weird and really awkward because we're sitting here like, I don't think nobody else up in here done dealt with what it is that we dealt with tonight. Because we went to a evening service that probably started at like 6 or 7 or so. We had been going at it for quite a while. We had been fighting these demons and fighting in the spirit and warfaring for hours, right? And we had to get it all together and clean all up and do all the stuff so that we can be prepared to go to church. And we still went. And it was a very weird, awkward feeling as we sat there just feeling like we were the only ones who had experienced this in the whole entire room. And that's when we knew for sure that God was calling us to something different, calling us to something more. And it was either this time or another time, but I'm going to tell this in this particular story. And in this particular story time, I'm going to say this. I was sitting there. We're all sitting in church, and it was definitely after we did a deliverance because we had multiple of these to come. So I have other ones that will be in future episodes. But as we sit here in church and as we're trying to process everything that's going on, literally, I hear God audibly. I hear him audibly. I hear him say to me these words. He says, "You are her lifeline, and without you, she dies." It was just as clear as day. I then understood that this relative of mine would definitely be attached to me for the rest of my life in some way, shape, or form, that I was to help to guide them spiritually, in life, all of that. And as the years progressed, we were able to see exactly what God was saying when he said that statement to me. And that was very heavy, getting that statement. But with all of the fighting, the spiritual fighting and warfare and stuff that we did earlier, it made that make so much sense. So much sense. But that was very heavy to hear, right? So I am going to end story time here today. And the unique blessing in this story time is the fact that my relative had me and my husband at the time to go with her on this journey, because it was a lot. You imagine as a 12-year-old, as any age, it's a lot. Definitely as a child, dealing with all of the things that she had dealt with. And now this, right? This was a new world for her, just like it was a new world for us. So the unique blessing is that she had somebody that not just only cared, but also was able to do something about this, right? In some type of way. And she had not had that before. And we had not had that before. And yeah. So it was like God was saying, hey, welcome to Deliverance, right? 101, because it's happening. So that's my story time for today. And join me next episode, where we are breaking those barriers and healing those shattered dreams, one story at a time. Bye.